Approximately 1 hour after you go to bed, the anterior lobe of your pituitary begins to vibrate and pulse, releasing an elixir called somatotropin, or you might more colloquially know this as your human growth hormone, the most powerful growth molecule known to mankind. Appropriately named, I'm sure you will not disagree. Your concern, and equally my concern in this, if you are watching this, is as a mature human being, we're only secreting approximately 400 units of this elixir. But if you're watching this with peach fuzz and spots, fret not, you'll grow out of it like I did. You're kind of sitting rather pretty at nearly 700 units per day. Oh boy, if I had the information I was giving you now at 14. But I didn't. I was inside playing Halo 3 and Call of Duty 4 like Gollum. But at the same time, other than maxing out bone growth during puberty, there still remain stories of growth spurts after puberty. I have some interesting theories I'm pondering to share in this regard. If you're interested, perhaps you can let me know. And of course, muscle growth, bone density. I mean, when's the last time you shat yourself? Look, it's not something I'm particularly fond of doing. Being a weak, frail old man isn't something that is desperately high on my agenda. And neither do I wish to entertain any aspect of my life entering a diatribe about why I never reached my genetic potential. Did you know 95% of adults over 35 will never sprint again in their lives? Ever. 35. The grave cannot come sooner for these particularly, frankly, meek prey of people. And herein lies both the festering tumor of cancerous disease on your body and the system that promises to remove this heavy weight, to extract this parasite and let your physical potential be realized. So, sprinting. If you were to go to your local park or beach and run flat out as hard as you can for 30 seconds, rest for about 4 minutes, and then repeat that procedure 5 times, your human growth hormone would go up a minimum of 771%, which, to be transparent with you, is actually a fairly conservative figure, with some studies estimating a 2,000% increase in HGH. Other results indicating HGH can be as much as, or as high as, I should say, 10 times your baseline after an hour of sprinting bouts. I always like to rationalize or theorize why something like that might yield such astronomical results. When you look at a study, it tries to control reality in an attempt to measure a particular variable or metric through a series of, cause and effect. We come back to the need to be powerful, to be formidable. Environment or need is the measure in which you express your means to be deadly, to be dangerous. When is the last time you had a need, not a desire, to be a killer? When is the last time in recent memory that you needed to perform at 100%, maybe even past that, because not performing at that level meant you traded your life? In my estimation, most people never expose themselves to that kind of stimuli. It's very, very rare in our society because, frankly, we actually live in, a fairly safe society. Then I started asking myself the question, what might be the consequences to that particular exposure? Growth. Monumental growth. I mean, look at these Olympic sprinters. They're built like killers, tall, muscle-bound killers. Now, the metric in which you can perform this consistently and reliably, has always been the factor that most people struggle with, including I, to be completely transparent with you. It's just not practical. Now, I'm fortunate to live in an area of the country where the beach is, a less than 5-minute walk from my residence. 3 times a week, I will do a 5K in the morning. Halfway through my runs, or about 2.5k in, I will slow and do 3 bouts of sprinting, which lasts approximately to 10 and 15 seconds. Now, some would argue that this doesn't meet the controlled conditions of 30 seconds, but nevertheless, I meet the essential conditions of exposure to the highest intensity of physical performance. The impacts of HGH stimulation is all but guaranteed. You know, on a personal note, actually, you ever tried to sprint flat out for 30 seconds? It is extraordinarily difficult. I mean, ATP only lasts about 10 seconds, which is the fuel needed to execute at that kind of level. I think incorporation of this kind of training in cardiovascular exercises is fairly simple. Even if you did cycle sprints as well, if you can push past the anxiety of performing this in public, because you know there is a certain attention that you garner when you perform high intensity training in a public context, then again, most people are so self-absorbed that they couldn't care less. That is really the irony of social anxiety, is nobody cares. In all my research, nothing has had more impact on HGH than sprinting. Then again, there is some reliable research that any style of high intensity training where you are performing flat out usually has reliable results on stimulating human growth hormone. For example, there was a study found that young individuals experienced a significant increase in HGH immediately after resistance exercises, with levels peaking shortly after the workout, but then gradually coming back to baseline. Now let's discuss something else that is challenging, but in a more different configuration. So, for example, if you were to cease all eating for 7 days, only supplementing with water, your HGH would increase as much as 1,250%. But even if you did 2 days, you'd still see increases in HGH markers to around approximately 200%. Fasting enhances the secretion of HGH by increasing both the frequency and amplitude of its release. This means that during fasting, HGH is released more often and then in larger amounts compared to when somebody is in a fed state. And just a brief little sidestep here, because I'm always besieged with questions around fasting. One of the primary roles of increased HGH during fasting is to conserve protein. So HGH reduces muscle protein breakdown. It is muscle preserving. Even when your caloric intake is low. It's called muscle sparing. If you are young and still growing, personally, I would not recommend it. Equally, the biggest confusion is if you're still keen on fasting but want to grow, it is more important. Your fasting window is more important. Fasting merely refers to an extended window in which you're next eating. When you do feed, therefore, this is the most significant factor. The biggest mistake you can make is filling your eating window with poor nutrition. One of the most important elements is fat. I say this again and again and again, and this is all in my fasting manual, which maybe you can get in the link below somewhere, that I wrote years and years ago. You need to get saturated fat into your diet. Eggs, certainly, but high fat content of red meat is astronomically or axiomatically essential. High fat ground beef is actually one of my favorites. I think it's a home run. You've got tremendous combinations of muscle meat, ground, cartilage and bone and offal and fatty tissue. It's everything your body needs. It will keep you full and satiated, and it's so calorically dense that you will retain or gain weight while fasting, depending on your preferences, if you are doing it correctly, as well as reducing your sugar intake and getting good sleep, which is critical for HGH promotion, is something that has a lot of merit in. Equally, I would add into the equation supplementation of maybe GABA, melatonin, arginine, and certain amino acids have data indicating HGH increases. If you would entertain some separate videos on these, maybe you leave me a comment GABA or the equivalent, and I can do that for you. Anyway, facts, no theories. Speak soon.